African Americans have been continually late to a party. This party is for intellectuals. When African Americans are invited to an intellectual party, they send people ill-equipped to handle the rigors of an intellectual conversation. But when buffoonery invites the African American, he shows up in droves. He sends his best buffoons that he can find. And the pickings is vast. So the African American can send the buffoon, but he can't send the intellectual. I sit up here and watched for years African Americans make up stories to every group on the planet. And what you're seeing is, over the years, that African Americans have claimed to Egypt, have claimed Vikings, have claimed Greeks, have claimed Romans, have claimed being Germans. The African Americans have claimed every single group on the face of this planet. The one group that they fail to claim is the one who they really are, which is the Canaanite. So when an African American complains that someone's intellectually flawed or their research is flawed, that complaint goes out void. It comes back void. It can go out any way that they like. They can scream at the top of their lungs, where every African American in the world can hear it, but nobody else is going to hear it. They're not going to hear it because they know African Americans don't show up to intellectual conversations. If you want to get the attention of an African American, say something stupid or invite something or someone who is stupid.
Or take your fucking clothes off. No, that one has to be added. Or take your fucking clothes off and you'll get their attention.
Either way, you'll get the same response from African Americans. And you'll definitely get that if you gear it towards the female or the effeminate men. Now, one thing that amazes me about the African American is he fails to realize his own vulnerability in America. Living mostly in the southeastern United States, sprinkled throughout the rest, he doesn't see the strategic problem with his situation. Strategically speaking, they're extremely vulnerable to annihilation. But yet, when you tell him this, and he regards this information the same way he regards anything else, it's a conspiracy. And you show him the math. You say, hey, you put this situation plus this situation together, it equals destruction. Everybody on the planet can see that except the African American. So when I myself will point out some things to an African American or the group, I know what to expect. I know what to expect, like a schedule, like it's a schedule. It's always on time.
Always on time.
The scholarship is always shoddy. There's always high emotions. They're going to interject ad hominem. They're going to interject things that you did not even say.
Now, dare I say this? I think Saeed watched the video where I said the same thing he said. And he watched your react. Dare I say, I think. I don't communicate with this man. I've attempted to communicate with this man. Now look at your reactions to the series of videos. Again, this is the second, maybe the third, actually it's the fifth time I've done this series of videos. We are not all Israel. In fact, only a small percentage claims the true blood. And we don't even have a way to test this. Because the people that don't want Israelites to resurface control the testing.
The ability for the African American to not be able to smell his own shit is
it's a fucking curse. How can you not see the trouble you start constantly? How can you not stop the people that cause trouble under the title African American? 30 people in the street watch 5 people fight. 30 divided by 5 is 6. If 6 people grabbed those 5 people and stopped those 5 African Americans from fighting and counseled them right there, that's the start of a change. But instead, the 30 people watching the 5 people act fucking ridiculous would rather cheer because it's a free show. Then you get a reporter in there saying, look at these niggas. Look at how these niggas act by themselves. Black on black crime.
Only be labeled as an historical failure. It's an historical failure of epic proportions. Now, when some of the people that are part of this group do smell the shit and say, hey, our shit stinks, we need to do something here,
what happens to them?
The whole bombard this individual.
That's called ostracification. Hey, stop saying we as niggas is doing wrong. You that said that, stick your fucking head in the sand like an ostrich. You're shunned by the black community.
I say this because what you're going to realize is that people are going to start choosing sides. And people don't get this. What do you mean by choosing sides? Yeah. People are going to start choosing sides to disassociate themselves from the African American. Why? Because nobody wants to be labeled as a moron.
Hey, you know what? This is a good time to read the wrong scripture. This scripture needs to be read. And people need to understand. First off, in the last series of videos, I didn't tell you to leave your woman. I said analyze who you mate with because this book says don't sow unto thorns. If you're a man that has dark skin, no matter what nation you're of, if you're married to a woman with dark skin, and you guys have a solid relationship, then these fucking videos ain't for you. They're not. If you're married, you have a solid relationship, and you don't live like a heathen, then what is the point of saying that you're a heathen? You're already showing through action you're not living like a heathen, no matter what nation you are. Let's pretend I'm Canaanite. If I'm Canaan, I am to reject my forefathers. If I want to go to heaven, I have to reject my forefathers. Moab and Ammon are pushed aside. They are not allowed in heaven. They are not going to stop pretending that they're Israel and leading you astray. The Canaanites have a chance. Moab and Ammon are Hebrew. They're the children of Lot that chose to not let their cousins pass on the land. They're blood relatives. And that's why they are kicked from heaven. The Canaanites aren't kicked from heaven. You have to get rid of the abominable ways. Multi-God worship. Listen to yourself. I worship God and Christ. God said there's no Savior besides God. Christians taught you that Jesus is your Savior. Some woman wrote me today saying, I'm going to unsubscribe and hope you follow God and His Son. God does not have sons that give salvation. God said He is the only one that gives salvation. So you said you're unsubscribing and you're leaving? Go. Be gone. All those that have the same mentality as her, go. Be gone. Hit the unsubscribe number so we can see the numbers drop down. This is a reduction of you. I've done this on purpose. I don't need 6,000 fucking wallflowers sitting around not doing any goddamn thing. Useless. I need preachers. I need men that are going to go to their enemies and say, salvation awaits. Throw away your God, throw away your nation. Isaiah chapter 2. The word that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass, past, present, or future. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains. In the mountains. Got to go to the top, and then in the mountains is the door. Established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all the nations shall flow unto it. Many people shall, what? Go from their land, and say, come with me, let us, what? Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and He will teach us to walk in His ways, and we will walk in His paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Nobody's telling you to separate from your righteous wife, from your solid marriage. If anything, if you're unmarried, people are telling you to marry. If you are planting your seed in a woman that is considered in this nation ratchet, that is what these videos are about. Now, if you're missing that point and you're protecting these ratchet women just because they have black skin, chafe to the fucking fire you are. You will be burned. And I don't give a fuck. You don't see me out there protecting white women. You don't even see me protecting yellow women. I'll protect anybody that says, I serve the Creator. I'm a human. That doesn't mean I can sit there and say, whoa, 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 and that person's going to vanish or anything. If I have a shield, I'll stand in front of you when you're in danger. Because if you're in danger, we serve the same God. Then I'm in danger. And this is the point everybody's missing. I don't give a fuck about your skin. But your skin does depict what nation you were a part of. So I shall read again. Now, the Israelites came into Utah, and when they came in through Utah, the land was already in the hands of other people. See, he sent you there to get rid of those people off the land, but instead of getting rid of them, you slept with them. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hast cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, and thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Me getting in front of this camera and saying Canaanites are a fucking abomination is me not showing mercy to you. You typing back, crying and shit, who gives a shit? Why should I care? I don't know you. We don't live together. We don't live by each other. I say meet me and protest the person that enslaved all 9 of our nations. And you reject. You say I'm fucking comfortable. That's the true sign of a fucking Canaanite. Comfort. Do not marry them. Do not give your sons to them. Do not give your daughters to them. I said something wrong?
As lazy, as shiftless. All the things African Americans historically been, especially because of themselves.
Did you hear that word he used?
Partly
this is not about opinion. This is not about stereotypes. This is about your historic heathen actions.
Because of other groups. Now what you're going to see is something that I started. And what I started, you're going to look back in the past and say, hey, yeah, he called that. Because what I brought out on the table was the true breakdown of African American lineage, where 60% of them are really Africans, and they're not budging from that. But the other 40%, where they are not African-based people, you're going to see a shift so fast out of this African-American group, it ain't going to be funny.
Oh, it's going to be funny as fuck. Now think, Hebrews are not African. Hebrews, a specific breed called the Israelite, we have in the Bible, are born on what we in America call African soil. Africans don't call Africa Africa. That's a European name imposed on the people that they have subjugated, that they rule over. They take your resources back to European countries. They use you in their armies and steal from other countries.
Because if anybody's been paying attention to my videos, I do not claim Africa. I do not claim black. If you go through your family's paternal line, you are what your father is. So any sane person can...
My dad is not an African. My dad looks just like that picture of Montezuma. When I send my dad Arnoldus Montanus version of Montezuma, my dad says, what the what? That look like me.
Can clearly see that 60% of African Americans share the same lineage. 40% of them do not. And it breaks down even more.
That's right. It breaks down even more. If 40% are not Canaan, that means 40% are what? Other nations. Let's pretend 30% of that 40%, you got 10 left over, 30% are Hebrew. That means 10% Moab, 10% Amun. And the last 10% of the 30%, Israel. Or what we assume to call Israel. That still leaves room for 10% that's left over. 60, 30, plus 10 equals 40. So 10% of black skin, not being Canaanite, not being any form of Hebrew, could be any other ancient black race. And don't be silly. There's plenty to choose from. I mean, we all know that this picture, these exist. We have, what? The Egyptians. We have the ancient Sumar. We have the ancient Elam. You already know about the Canaanites, but that's a false picture because there's a beard there. You already know about black civilization of Crete and Greece, the Minoan and Mycenaean. The original black civilization of Italy, the Etruscans, the ancient Indus Valley, Harappa and Mohenjo. I'm not pronouncing that. Modern India and Pakistan. So there are many nations of black, especially here in the Americas. So historically, ancient Italians came, ancient Grecians came. We already know modern Israel and Palestine. See, ancient Canaan and Phoenicia, modern Israel and Palestine, all lumped into one group. Now that's our argument. One group, one grouping being identified under one classification as African American.
So when people get online and complain about someone not having a so-called African American wife, they can complain all they want.
Whoa! Whoa! Now, that statement right there, we know this video has to do with the series of videos that we've done. Now, we know Khalil will not get on the phone with us. For whatever reason, he enjoys the videos. He talks shit about me, talks about my mom. Well, my mom's house, at least, not directly about my mom. Irrelevant. But now, there's the sentence that shows it's about these last few videos.
40% of them do not. And it breaks down even more. So when people get online and complain about someone not having a so-called African American wife, they can complain all they want, but they're going to have a moral compass to stand on 60% of the time if they are one of those 60% of African Americans.
No.
But if
we're going to go back to this, the moral compass. This is the heart of it. The moral compass.
If they are one of those 60% of African Americans, they can complain all they want, but they're going to have a moral compass to stand on 60% of the time if they are one of those 60% of African Americans.
Now, that statement takes us to another video. It truly does. But there's still a little more than 5 minutes left on here. I want to hear.
But if they are not one of those African Americans by blood through their father, they'll be right as well to not choose an African American wife. Now, as far as the Bible is concerned, the Bible is clearly, if you turned up your intelligence a little bit, you would see that the Bible is clearly tampered with. Old Testament and New Testament. If you went into any of the Asian studies at all, you would see all of the similarities with ancient Buddhism, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism. You can see all of these things. But the African American, especially the 60%, and the 40% follow what the 60% are doing because they don't know any better. What the 60% do is put a blanket over everything that they come in contact with. If they come in contact with Egypt, they say, oh, the 60% represent those Egyptians. If they come in contact with Asians, they say, oh, we're also the Asians. If they come in contact with the Europeans, they say, oh, we're the Europeans too, the 60%. You see the fallacy of that argument?
You understand? When you say black royalty or black success, your broke ass is the first to claim, that's my heritage! No evidence. The only evidence history even gives us is that you're the Canaanites of the Bible. We're just moving into evidence of whom Egypt is. That last 10%. The ones that enslaved the Israelites in the first place. Mizrahim.
But what I'm telling you is that African Americans may claim to a lot of that, but you have to break it down.
You have to bring the evidence.
60% of African Americans can lay claim to Africa and everything in it. 15% of African Americans can claim to Europe and everything in it. 12.6% of African Americans can claim to Asia. Do you see my point here? But the African American fails to understand the basics of human beings, of any creature.
No offense, this is why God called you the heathen. When we go into the Egyptian shit, we show this great empire that started doing what? Worshipping many gods and fucking anything that walked.
You are only going to be what you are. If my DNA and my spirit is calling on my Asian ancestry to be attracted to what I am, how is that incorrect? You know how it's incorrect? When the 60% of African Americans and their women are socially disabled and mentally destroyed because of their lack of good decision making. So they start to blame other people that look like that they've been told that are them, without going inside their own selves and their own spirit and seeing, do all of us seem the same? Do all of us look the same? Do all of us act the same? Do we have the same spirit? Do we like the same things? And that answer would be no. But for the 60% majority to make themselves better, they beat up on the 40% minority. But
that's called bullying. Don't you get it? That's a thug mentality. Thug mentality. Group thug mentality.
40% minority have the ability to reason, to calculate a strategy out of their situation.
Do I have to go and bring up the baptized A-scribe video where he shows you if you have long genitals, that means that you are beyond human. Somewhere in history, your family intermixed with something that has a gigantic penis. That's called bestiality. It's called bestiality, but they title it bestiality. This type of intercourse, say it's the best sex. Sleeping with a beast. So, do I have to bring up that baptized A-scribe video where he uses scripture to show that some nations intermingle with beasts, and you can tell by their extra long genitalia? I mean, he uses scripture.
Children won't have this problem. My children won't have this problem of being labeled African American. My children will not have this problem of being mixed in with the people who don't like them, accept them, or understand them. They won't have this problem. I will take all of the beating for them. I will kick and scratch and claw to get away from you niggas. You 60% Africans, you 15% Europeans, to be around my people. Because I know what it is to understand that you and I are not the same. When you figure this out, you're going to have people like me sawing your neck off. Because I'm not taking your bullshit.
I ain't no different than you, shit. More money, more problems. I solemnly swear to tell you the truth. Allow me to reintroduce myself to the cruel world that we all living in. Still chasing them dividends, whether it's thousands or millions.
Now look, I don't know any of these YouTube authors. None of them talk to me personally. I don't have permission to use their videos to show you where we as a group messed up. But hopefully, if they see that their videos are being used, hopefully they think it's, or see it's in a positive way, and they'll accept the idea that I use their videos.
It's still a hustle, ain't it? The grind is universal. Might take muscle to gain the upper hand, some understand.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of An American Deception. I'm your host, Red Tail Hawk, also known as Tavis Sanders. We'd like to welcome our co-host, Renee Sanders, also known as Red Silver Fox.
Now, I would encourage you to subscribe to all these artists that I show you today. Now, these are two intelligent people. I hardly ever use their videos because I cuss a lot. And I don't want to sit there and cuss while their image is up on screen, and I don't want to offend them or any other YouTube artists. Most of the times when I use these YouTube videos, I show you that somebody's lying. These people, I don't believe are lying, so just listen.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, we appreciate your comments and your questions in regards to the show and your participation. We get a lot of good information, a lot of good feedback from people, and so today we wanted to take a minute and acknowledge everybody that's been hitting us up and just answer some of your questions. That we thought was, pretty decent questions, and definitely keep them coming, because if you don't hear your question and comment this time, we definitely get back to you. Okay? How that sound to you? That sound good?
Sounds great. Let's go.
All right, cool. Okay, so first question is, where or how did the lighter-skinned native tribes and or members develop, considering the aboriginals or natives originally discovered in Americas were of a copper tone? So, you want to add?
Now, first off, I think that question is biased, because copper tone, what we call yellow, falls under that. Dark complexion or black falls under that. Pennies are made of copper, and different amounts of copper placed into pennies gives you its different colors. That's why you have some pennies that are golden looking, more of a yellow. That's why you have pennies that are brown. That's how you have pennies that have whether they've started to acidically change color or not, they still go black as his shirt. So Again, I think the question's biased because copper-colored people covers the whole spectrum. The word used there instead of spectrum is gradient. Now, I'll show you what a gradient is so you understand. Now, hopefully, you'll remember this, so that way when people say gradient, you'll understand. Now, we'll hit choose images. An inclined part of a road or a slope. Now, that's not a fair definition. Now, as soon as I find one that's realistic, it's a color spectrum. That's a gradient. This is a gradient of a rainbow. Alright, now do you see how it goes from red through the color schemes? Now, each line, you can't see it that well unless you look very closely. There's at least 16 colors right here on this, and you can't tell unless you look very closely. Now go back up. Let's see gradient of, and let's pick gray. Now, do you understand now? See how instead of going white to black, it goes white to gray? This is a gradient. Now, let's look at the definition real quick. Gradient. The word gradual is there. Graduate. You understand, when you graduate, you go through a series of education. You go on an incline, a slope. When you're in kindergarten, by the time you're in high school, you've gone on a slope, which is uphill, an incline, uphill. You have risen to a point. Now it can be downhill, it can be decline. An increase or decrease in the magnitude of a property. Temperature, pressure, concentration. The magnitude of the property of temperature, increase or decrease. Gradient. In the morning it starts off cool and it's hot by night. That's a gradient. Here's gradient of, and since we're talking brown, let's see a gradient of brown in images. Now, there's two types of gradients. There is a center point where it goes outwardly and the darker is on the outside. And there's a bar graph where it's light on one side and dark on the other. Now, I've not asked the computer what color brown. I've just said brown, so it showed me random pictures of brown. As I've chosen brown, you can see the outline of black here. You can see the outline of white here. Even our Caucasians have shades of brown. Hence, I bring up the bisque color, which is a lighter orange. Even the color of corn. And as you can see, there's different properties of bisque soup. The lighter properties prove my point. I go up, I type in cardboard. Again, we have the color spectrum, the gradient of browns. Dark brown to light brown. Now, if you're confused by this, that is a shame. It is not meant for confusion. It is meant to highlight copper-colored people and the rainbow spectrum or gradient of brown.
Answer that question?
Okay, well, we can first begin by saying that they were not just copper tones, that there were many complexions from light to dark.
Right.
Okay, and that happened because there were many migrations that happened that came over here to North America.
Now, when Moses goes into the land, he's told to climb Mount Nebo. In Deuteronomy 34 and 49, 32 and 49, 32, Deuteronomy 32, get thee up into this mountain, Abarim, unto Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, which is over against Jericho, and behold the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel as a possession. That means this is the land of Abram. You came back to Mount Abram. Abarim. Abba, father. Rim. The rim he was to sacrifice instead of Isaac. You coming with Moses back to the land with the Canaanites already here is a migration. The Canaanites leaving their homestead, coming to the land of Shem, where the land of Nod is. We can see this in Jubilees, I believe chapter 10. That is a migration as well. First migration is Canaanites that I've talked about. Second migration is Israelites that I have talked about. The Israelite migration was given orders to destroy the Canaanites, which they did not.
So it wasn't just one migration. One of the first migrations, or what there is evidence of, is 51,000 years ago. There is evidence of human existence in several areas in the Americas, and one in particular in North America, in the South Carolina area.
Okay, cool. So, all right. So what you said is that there were more than one migration into the Americas.
Yes.
And
yes.
so, because of those different migrations, the different skin tones were around or appeared in America.
They developed from these different migrations, and the people mixed from the different migrations.
Pre-colonial period.
Oh yes, pre-colonial.
Okay, yeah. So
yes.
Before Columbus and that migration occurred.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you said South Carolina.
That's correct. Yes.
That's our hometown. So I'd like to hear a little bit about this.
Yes.
So tell us about what you found in South Carolina.
Okay. Well, as a matter of fact, one of the areas is in Allendale County,
which is definitely our home state. Yeah, there you go.
Yes, the University of South Carolina has been doing a lot of excavations and things in that area, and that's where they have found evidence of 51,000 years ago of human existence there.
Yeah. Well, I just said my family's from Allendale, so that history really, really does matter to me. What was going on here. We have a history that says that people were existing in this area for 55,000 years, way before anything else that they want to talk about here.
Now, the numbers don't truly matter. What matters is pre-Columbian. That is the most important fact. It doesn't matter if they can say, oh, people were here at the dawn of time. Let me explain something to you. If we follow the Bible and it says Ham, Shem, and Japheth parted ways and went and built in different areas, then all three migrated. You understand that? No matter where you go on the earth, no matter where you live, no matter where you're watching these videos from, somebody migrated there. Columbus didn't discover America. Columbus' job, Here it's funny. It says, hey, Catholic Biblical Associated America. This draft is not to be used or cited with any form without written. Fuck you. You stole my land. Just scroll down to this shit. At the beginning of the book, collection of authorities. That's what this word means. You just type it in, it says it means authorities. Saying opinions, sayings, opinions, prophecies concerning the need to recover the holy city and Mount Zion, and the discovery of the conversion of the islands and the Indies, Indios, God's children, and of all peoples and nations. So right there, you have their own fucking words, many peoples and many nations. It doesn't say nation. Nation means one. Nations means many. So a war party with technology of 120 boats came over and attacked individual nations one at a time. When the indigenous nations, or the nations that migrated there, started to see what was going on and finally grouped together to protect their land, then they were fighting against the English and the French and the Spanish and the Portuguese, of course. We need to understand what really happened.
In America.
Yes.
And so, I really like, this question personally.
Yeah, and another thing is, what is interesting is that this area, this Allendale County area, tens of thousands of years later though, but still this area was an area where there was a very large Indian trading post that was in that area.
And so the Indian trading post
That means different Indian nations grouped together in one spot for commerce.
Existing during the colonial periods, and I know that it later turned into plantations, because I know at the Indian trading post, they were also trading, amongst other things, slaves.
They were trading slaves, yes, and it turned into really one of the largest slave plantations that was in South Carolina, and even.
This means before Columbus, if the Indians dealt with indigenous servants, that means they were traded there, as well as skins and hides and food. That means when Europeans conquered the area, they already saw that that was the trade center, so they reestablished that as a trade center. Now trading slaves of all Indians captured or defeated. You can't make a dead man a slave, so you get my point, right?
North America, I do believe, that became one of the largest plantations.
Okay, real quick, let's just get back to what they found sediment.
North America itself became one of the largest plantations. Let me explain this really quick. Spain and Portugal came over and overthrew the Holy City and the connecting surrounding cities, and the connecting surrounding cities to those. They took all the silver, all the gold, all the copper that they could carry, that they could find. They even marched Indians into Atzland, which is in Utah, to find the gold mines. That's why they tell you Spanish gold is found on American soil, because they used the indigenous people as slaves to mine the gold. Then they killed them in the mines.
They found sediment of human activities. I just wanted to make...
The Europeans came over. I almost forgot the point of all this. The Europeans came over and said, fuck, everything's stolen. The only thing we got is these fucking Indians. The only thing we got is a large amount of people we don't respect as people. So let's utilize these peoples as a workforce to build our empire. you go back to Exegesis, and it states at the bottom, it's like page 19 or something like that. Give me 1 second. I gotta find it first. And I know what I'm looking for. That's the beauty of it. So I took the time to read this last night. Ha! Told you. It's actually on page 19. See? What Her Highness... Wait. The Catholic monarchs granted Columbus in exchange for discovering and conquering islands and mainlands in the ocean sea the privileges of their realms, admiralty, and the viceroyalty, and governorship of territories to be discovered and conquered. Clearly then, the would-be New World already has a governor even before its discovery and conquest outside of the charter that engendered it. What their highnesses capulate to Columbus, what they give to Columbus, is not merely a patent for exploratory activity or even for a mercantile and exploitive venture. But what these people really did is they gave him a charter for founding of an empire on our necks.
Make sure that the crowd was aware of what we were saying.
Right. They did not find bones, and that is one thing that they didn't find, but they did find sediment. They found carbon remains left behind by the people, so it was showing that people were there burning things, and they also found tools there also.
And again,
that's called the evidence of factory process. That's factory process, but it doesn't have four walls and a roof and ventilation and water flowing in with pipes, right? That's a factory process. They're breaking something down, converting it, whether they're using it by boiling measures or dropping it in the cold water for lowering the temperature.
This is going to be around the time that migration started to really happen around the world, where people really started to get up and move beyond a central location, started traveling all over the place.
Right, that's correct. Yes, and yes, so it's not too long.
All right, we're going to stop there. This is one of the best YouTube authors to ever hit YouTube. All right? This is one of the best YouTube authors to ever hit YouTube. This is CDF, the Conspiracy Dude's Fury. Let's listen to him.
Today's video is brought to you by a donation from a subscriber. He wanted to know, why don't the so-called African American resemble Africans from Africa? Now, while doing the research, I fell down a rabbit hole that reaffirmed my beliefs that the African American is an artificial construct. And as a result, I thought it would be best suited to title this video, Why Did They Create the African American? Believe it or not, the African American is indigenous to the Americas. This includes North America, South America, and its surrounding islands. But unfortunately, the African American would rather hold firm and romanticize the root slave narrative his oppressor gave him. In my video, Why Black Children Inherit Dust, I informed the African American he's not really a citizen. I received a lot of backlash for that statement, so before I begin this presentation, I want to briefly elaborate on the quasi-citizen status of the African American. Now, as I stated many times before, the Dred Scott case states no person of African descent, whether or not emancipated from slavery, could be a citizen of a state. Some people proudly argue that the 14th Amendment granted them citizenship. But my argument is that no Supreme Court case or documentation directly overruled the Dred Scott case. For example, we have the case of George Stenny, who was the youngest person in American history to be executed. And in 2014, a judge directly overturned the ruling of the conviction of that young boy. Someone has to explain how we have presidential candidate Mike Huckabee that stated that he thinks that there's a law out there somewhere that says black people are not human. And on another occasion, he states that black people aren't technically citizens. In other words, African Americans are citizens only in name, but not law. Then we have MSNBC Harris Perry stating that blacks are still not seen as American citizens. Even to this day, we still have whites-only swimming pools and segregated proms. How much do these people have to spit in the face of the African American for him to get the message he is not a true citizen? James Lowen wrote a book illustrating that in America today, we still have sundown towns where if the so-called African American citizen gets caught after sundown, he will be killed. For those who still boastfully claim that the 14th Amendment made them citizens, how do you explain the Naturalization Act of 1870 that came after it? What was the purpose of that act? How do you explain the fact that as recent as 2013, we have African Americans still marching and protesting for Voting Rights Act? If y'all are citizens and the 15th Amendment gave y'all rights to vote, why do y'all need a Voting Rights Act? The black American was once a productive and innovative member of society, but now he has become the African American, an artificial construct, slowly self-destructing and driving himself into extinction.
The only duty we owe to history is to rewrite it, rewrite it, rewrite it, Oscar Wilde.
What we need to do is flood the world with new African histories that contain our European perspectives only. What we need to do is flood the world, flood the world, flood the world.
The 14th Amendment to the Constitution, ratified in 1868 following the Civil War. As barbaric as it may sound today, the black slaves prior to the conclusion of the Civil War were legally considered to be property, with none of the rights or privileges of free-born people, only duties.
You were valued $1.7 trillion of merchandise. That made the United States the richest country in the world. Hundreds of years ago.
The money interests took advantage of America's desire to free the slaves and found a way to use the swiftly adopted post-war constitutional amendments to enslave all of the people. The deceit is in the wording of both 13th and 14th Amendments. You will note that the 13th Amendment provides that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States. But why the emphasis on involuntary servitude? Isn't it the same thing as slavery, of involuntary servitude, because they wish to retain another type of slavery, voluntary servitude? Voluntary servitude is an ancient and established concept. It was the way serfs became subjects to their lords during...
This has advanced to the stock market.
Feudal times in England and other European countries.
The lord of you today are companies. Your lordship, may I join your land, your company.
Countries. It was a way for free men to earn a living at a time when all property was held by a select few, and thus anyone who wanted to farm and support their family had first to agree to be subject to a...
If you want to work in a city to support your family, you must have a social security number. You must turn this social security number into your lord, your company you're applying for, and other private information to be subjected to the empowerment of that lord. IBM, Microsoft, 7-11.
Lord of the land. Our forefathers hated this concept and designed our Constitution to exclude titles of nobility, making all Americans sovereign.
So Shell Gas Company is sovereign, and you give away your sovereignty to pump gas and ring up things for them. General Dollar is sovereign, and you throw away your sovereignty to sell products for them. IBM is sovereign. You see the point, right?
The 14th Amendment turned the intention of the founders on its ear by making voluntary servitude a requirement for former slaves to gain the rights already guaranteed to free-born United States citizens.
You must have a social security number if you choose to eat where roads are paved.
When the slaves were released from their involuntary servitude following the war, their status was changed from that of being property to that of being a person.
We must now trick them into trading with us.
But being a person still entitled them to none of the rights associated with citizenship. So the 14th Amendment ostensibly was written to provide the former slaves with the same constitutional rights of free-born American citizens, but only if they agreed first to become subject to the jurisdiction of the corporate United States.
That means the corporate United States, the army, must protect you. Black man, if someone breaks into your house, you cannot call the police. You have to call the army. This is what you don't understand, and they will never tell you. You have given yourself to the title of the United States, never the state you reside in. Never. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall be abridge the privileges or immunities, this means protection of the law, of the citizens of the United States. As a citizen of the United States, black man, when you have a civil problem, you ought to call the United States. How do you call the United States? The municipalities are not there for you. They make money off of you.
Making oneself paramountly, that is, first subject to the jurisdiction of the laws of the United States, however, limits access to parts of the Bill of...
You are subject to the law, but the laws do not protect you. Says Lincoln, says Jefferson, says Andrews, says Dred Scott case.
Rights, as we'll explain in a moment. But first remember, anyone who voluntarily subjects himself to the laws or jurisdiction of another is, in every way, obligated to abide by the terms of any contracts or laws established by whomever establishes the rules of the contract.
You have subjected yourself to whomever draws the rules of your contractual agreement. Municipalities have nothing to do with this. This is why they are called the Brotherhood in Blue. Blue uniforms to represent blue blood. The blue uniforms changed to black uniforms to represent the Black Knight. The Black Knight is the knight of the Black Pope. The Black Pope is the opposite of the White Pope. The Black Pope is the king of the Jesuit order, and the Black Knight is his general. The Blue Bloods sided with the Black Knight over the White Pope. The White Knight is now your black-skinned president, whom, if you have an intruder, you are to call instead of your local municipality. As of 2014, reparations were to be handed back to you, so saith the White Pope. The Black Pope, with his Black Knight, has made mercenary corporations on United States soil to prevent this from happening.
In simple terms, this meant that the former slaves became subjects first to the United States,
your president,
secondly to the state in which they lived.
Policeman gives you an order. It is up to you to recognize that you are subject to the president, the head of the corporation, as they are subject to the president, the head of the corporation. As long as you don't steal, murder, or trespass, they have no business with you. And this is what you do not understand.
They had no sovereignty whatsoever.
Because you have no sovereignty.
This status had never existed in the United States prior to that time. The 14th Amendment created a new class of citizenship in the United States, a second-class citizenship. Up until 1868, every American was a paramount citizen of their state, and by virtue of that, also a citizen of the United States.
Listen closely.
With full individual sovereignty as guaranteed by Amendments 9 and 10 in the Bill of Rights. But so-called naturalized citizens, or 14th Amendment citizens, are paramountly subject to all laws of the United States, and, having no status as freeborn citizens, have no access at all to the unenumerated rights retained for the people by Articles 9 and 10 of the Bill of Rights. That's because, in order to get any rights at all, they had to subject themselves to the jurisdiction of the corporate United States, which left them no unenumerated rights.
So, under the law, because you have black skin and I have black skin, even though I'm yellow, I'm classified as black, we have no right. Set your sights on Zion. Assemble yourselves. Flee.
Alright, so now let's take a look at why they created the African American. Now there's some bullet points that I want to discuss. The first is describing the African American, why they created the African American, why the African American is not African, comparing pictures, creating zombies, Dogs Lives Matter, and lastly, my final thoughts. Now let's first describe the African American. The African American is a creation of European think tanks and secret societies. He has been disconnected from nature, and in general he has no survival skills. If he were to be placed suddenly in the wilderness, he would not survive. The African American does not produce his own food. He does not discover, mine, and refine any natural resources, and sadly, he does not even educate his own children. By and large, the African American hates the truth and shuns the occult, while his oppressors use the occult to stay in power. The average African American is cold-blooded and brutal towards each other, but loving towards foreigners and his oppressors. For the most part, he does not know who his enemy is and tries to be accepted by the people that treat him the worst. The typical African American does not know where in Africa he's from. Typically, the African American is an advocate for diversity, but no one wants to include him. In general, the African American women have been stripped of shame, modesty, and are racially dead. For the most part, they hate black genetics and are currently the #1 killer of the black race by way of...
Hate black genetics. Why the fuck are people with burnt hair even fucking communicating with me? Please help me understand that. If you burn your hair, you hate your genetics. That's the bottom line. It doesn't matter if you're programmed to. You've accepted the programming. You haven't rejected the programming. You haven't shaved your burnt hair off. If thy woman shave thy head and her nails, reject her father and her mother. Canaanites come unto Israel righteously, then they have to reject their forefathers, not promote this black power thuggery.
Abortion. The African American.
Oh, let's not skip that. Number one killer of black people is black women through abortion. Not cops, not black adults, not black on black crime, black women. Why not just get a condom? Oh, because who worship Moloch? I'm going to say it again. Who worship Moloch? I'm going to say it again. Who worship Moloch? I'm going to say it again. Historically, who worship Moloch? Egyptians? Canaanites? Man.
That treat him the worst. The typical African American does not know where in Africa he's from. Typically, the African American is an advocate for diversity, but no one wants to include him. In general, the African American women have been stripped of shame, modesty, and are racially dead.
Racially dead. Stripped of shame. Look at these. Burnt hair. Wig. 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 Some kind of pride, and then it's burnt at the top. Run around. You think she went to the club like this? In her fucking underwear? In clothes that are meant to be used behind closed doors? Shameless. I don't care if she's dark brown. I don't care if she's yellow as an apple. If she does this, she's shameless. This Bible talks about you wearing clothes that does not show your figure, yet everybody that argues with me either has burnt hair or whore clothes on. And what'd that guy say in the comments of my comments? The women today want to act like the men, and the men are thugs, so that... And here you go, one more. Right here. Look. She's wearing a wig. Ashamed. I'm ashamed.
Of shame, modesty, and are racially dead. For the most part, they hate black genetics and are currently the #1 killer of the black race by way of abortion. The African Americans that don't fit this description are unfortunately in the minority.
In the minority. I don't see nobody coming to me.
For the most part, they hate black genetics and are currently the #1 killer of the black race by way of abortion. The African Americans that don't fit this description are unfortunately...
I don't see nobody coming to me looking like this, saying, you're not right. Nobody's coming to me with this image saying, I disagree. Nobody. Even the one that calls my wife a fucking heathen.
Know who his enemy is and tries to be accepted by the people that treat him the worst. The typical African American does not know where in Africa he's from. Typically, the African American is an advocate for diversity, but no one wants to include him. In general, the African American women have been stripped of shame, modesty, and are racially dead. For the most part, they hate black genetics and are currently the #1 killer of the black race by way of abortion.
#1 killer of the black race.
The African Americans that don't fit this description are unfortunately in the minority. In general, the African American males are simps, manginas, and white knights. Currently, they have reached a new low by suggesting the black woman is God. The African American men that don't fit this description.
Now, what they make about with the video they make about Sarah Sue
currently they have reached a new low by suggesting the black woman is God.
What did they say? Oh, this nigga's turned out he's a crackhead. Preaching, yellow man preaching that Egyptian shit. Abomination. Do I need to pull up the video that shows you the sexual acts of Egyptians? Self-suck, blowing themselves? using weights on their penis to enlarge it, sleeping with animals so that the next child might come out with horns and a long penis.
The African American men that don't fit this description are unfortunately in the minority.
And I say, grow your hair out. And you act like I'm saying evil shit.
The African American men that don't fit this description are...
And I say, grow your heritage. Your hair. If your hair is long, you can't even... It's hard to even tell you got waves. You can't even use Africans grow waves argument. Not to mention, Ephraim and Manasseh are fucking mixed with Egyptians. They're always gonna look Egyptian with beards.
Fortunately, in the minority. The so-called African American will always give excuses why he can't break free and be independent. He is easily discouraged if a roadblock is put in his way. And if a black leader gets assassinated, so does the mission.
Malcolm X got killed, everybody stopped. Martin Luther King got killed, everybody stopped. Everybody stops. Monolithic thought. I say we need to think as bees. We need to think as ants. We'll use the creator as our queen bee. Excuse the feminine thing, but relating it to nature, it's a queen bee. It's not a male bee. When we look at ants, it's the same situation. Unfortunately, it's the queen ant. Whatever. The creator gives us all a blessing. We have children through his blessing. Whether we like that or not.
African American shuns the idea of monolithic thought.
Monolithic thought. Work as one to build something great. All you people preach Egypt. What did Egypt think? Oh, let's think in monolithic thought. Let's build monoliths. Gigantic structures. The black community tries to build, niggas knock it down. Niggas try to build, the black community comes and knocks it down. It's a tug of war because of your identity. And you don't see that's the key. It's you people preach, everybody with black skin, don't even fucking try it. Everybody with black skin preaches, know thyself. Your ancient self is part of yourself. If you don't know who you are anciently, how the fuck can you figure out who you are in the present?
While foreigners use monolithic thought to practice group economics to milk the African American community while boycotting it at the same time.
That's group thought. We are against group thought, but we put our money into other nations' group thought. We buy all their products. Everything. We do not produce, we don't even produce food. Fucking call yourselves Israelites. You don't even go into corn-based food materials. People take corn, they make chips, they make everything. You can't even get together as 3 people and make a bag of fucking chips. Just sure line up 3 in a row to buy bags of chips.
Time. The African American has no free will and can be easily controlled by using entertainers, politicians, pastors, and black women. The aforementioned are all gatekeepers to white hegemony. They help keep the status quo and prevent change. The artificial construct.
Cultural hegemony. They control the way you think, live, breathe, your morals, the way the world sees you, the way the world sees them. White hegemony is white supremacy. He's saying these black people are gatekeepers to promote white supremacy, and because you love them so much, you're blinded and you can't see it.
African American is a creation similar to Frankenstein. An artificial European, but stripped of its language, culture, humanity, and lineage.
All these big names, Steve Harvey, I don't give a damn about slavery.
Now let's talk about why they created the African American. Simply put,
look at this. This is what you used to be. You used to walk around in a moral form.
Now let's talk.
Look at this. Suits, hats. That's what the Canaanite used to be. This is what you become. Always walking around with your fucking asshole showing and your dick at the edge of your zipper. Why? Ready to fuck or be fucked. Simply, you're turning to homosexuals. You've turned into base-minded people. And when people become base-minded, they call them baseless. Because you can't get out of the all I want to do is eat, drink, and fuck. You're in a leisure mentality. Because you're comfortable with white supremacy.
About why they created the African American. Simply put, the African American was created to slowly self-destruct and rid the world of himself, so foreigners can set up an environment that is conducive to their way of living and help drive the African American into extinction. The bankers have skillfully created the African American. The main purpose of the African American is to build the empires of others and to take the earnings he makes from building to buy those people's products.
Let's go back. Exegesis. What their highnesses capulate to Columbus is not merely a patent for exploratory activity or even for merchant sales, mercantile and exploit, slavery, venture, right? But a charter for the founding of an empire. What's the words that just came out of his motherfucking mouth?
The aforementioned are all gatekeepers to white hegemony. They help keep the status quo and prevent change. The artificial construct, African American, is a creation similar to Frankenstein, an artificial European but stripped of its language, culture, humanity, and lineage. Now let's talk about why they created the African American. Simply put, the African American was created to slowly self-destruct and rid the world of himself, so foreigners can set up an environment that is conducive to their way of living and help drive the African American into extinction. The bankers have skillfully created the African American. The main purpose of the African American is to build the empires of others and to take the earnings he makes from building to buy those people's products. Alright, so now let's talk about why the African American is not...
You're just building other people's empire. That's all it is.
And to take the earnings he makes from building into extinction. The bankers have skillfully created the African American. The main purpose of the African American is to build the empires of others and to take the earnings he makes from building to buy those people's products.
Let's go back. Exegesis, and says what their highnesses capulate to Columbus is not merely a patent for exploratory activity or even for mercantile or exploitive venture, but a charter for forming an empire. That's interesting.
Alright, so now let's talk about why...
It's interesting how 500 years ago, this is what they did, and look today how you're just consumers. You've been turned into crickets and fucking locusts, and all you do is
the African American is not African. The African American holds on to the theory that all life came from Africa, yet Europeans, Asians, and other races don't claim to be African. Nothing about the African American is African. He has no African language, customs, religion, no African citizenship, and to make matters worse, the African American can't name what part of Africa he's from. Ironically, the people in the continent of Africa don't call themselves African. Only the Black American holds firm to this title. Other races don't claim to be associated to a...
Now, Jesse Jackson, 1998. patented the word African American. What they've done. What? Not merely a patent for exploit. Jesse Jackson has a patent. It's called African American.
American holds firm to this title. Other races don't claim to be associated to another race just based on skin color, hair texture, and phenotype. If the Europeans brought African slaves to America, humiliated and dehumanized them, why would they put them on the currency? Let's take a look at some images of black Americans on the U.S. currency. If blacks were brought to America as slaves and had no rights and were seen as property, why did Europeans bother to create laws that stated interracial marriage is illegal, Indians and Africans are to be called Negro, and all non-Christians will be slaves? How exactly did African chattel slaves turn to slave owners themselves? It's well known that so-called black people had black slaves. This fact only makes sense if the black slave owners were native to the land and they had African slaves. The African American
Canaanites. Black Canaanites owning other Canaanites. And Hebrews and Moabs and Ammon.
continues to run away from the fact that he's indigenous to America. Here are a few questions that the African American will refuse to answer. Where does the word African come from? Why don't the people in what part of Africa are you from? Since you believe the transatlantic slave narrative, where are the slave ships at? What forest was cut down to build these slaves? How did the slaves survive a 1 to 3 month trip across the Atlantic where it's freezing cold, where they're packed like sardines and surrounded by urine, blood, feces, and filth? Also, if more than half of the slaves died...
Hey, another question. Where are the Europeans' food? If they're traveling, they say it took 5 to 9 months. Now again, if your ass was filled up on their cargo ship, let's get that picture.
That are showcasing the slave ships. How did the slaves survive a 1 to 3 month trip across the Atlantic where it's freezing?
Right? That's what they tell you. Right? You're stacked in here in the middle, and this is their food and cargo. Other pictures you see, the slaves are down here, and there is no midsection.
Cold, where they're packed like sardines and surrounded by urine, blood, feces, and filth. Also, if more than half of the slaves died during the trip, that would mean there was no return on investment. So why continue using expensive slave ships? What would be more easier and logical? Transporting millions of people across the Atlantic or using the people that are already on the land? What African nation is claiming African Americans? Why has no African nation sought reparations for slavery? These questions will frustrate the average African American, and he will be either ready to fight you...
Now, Columbus sails into the Caribbean. Now you have 14 Caribbean nations sue Britain for slavery. He makes a great point. Why aren't Africans suing?
It would be more easier and logical, transporting millions of people across the Atlantic or using the people that are already on the land. What African nation is claiming African Americans? Why has no African nation sought reparations for slavery? These questions will frustrate the average African American, and he will be either ready to fight you, curse you out, or run away.
Now you see this again? They're suing.
Curse you out.
As a nation. Not one nation, 14 nations. And we can't even get together and make one fucking tribe.
Either ready to fight you, curse you out, or run away. No matter how much education the African American receives, no matter how many clues are given to him, he still wholeheartedly believes the narrative by his oppressor, that his roots are in Africa. Every religious belief given to the African American places him in a foreign land. The Moors point to their roots in Morocco, The Hebrew Israelites and Christians point to Israel, and the Nation of Islam point to Mecca. So in this section, we're going to be comparing pictures, but I'm not going to be giving any commentary because I want people to compare for themselves and make up their mind if the African American is indeed African. American is indeed African.
Now these ones are interesting, right? Here we have someone from Ghana, right? Then you have your person from North America, and you have your person from Vanuatu, however it's pronounced. Here you have a famous North American and a West African that is famous as well. Now, they look nothing alike. When you look at the North American and you look at the man from Vanuatu, whatever it is, you can see how they look alike, and none of these men look like the person from West Africa. Now, West Africa, Nigeria, right? You would think that Negro, right? That's what you would think. That's what you're born to think. Now look at this woman from North America, and look at this woman from Papua New Guinea. You would think they were fucking sisters. You would think this North American actress went to Papua New Guinea and just started living her life there. They are two totally different people. You can see they've been separated some point in history, whether it be through migration or whether it be through colonialism. Now there are people here that look like this West African. But is the woman that is here in the United States that looks like the West African, is she related to the woman that looks like this North American? Are they related by blood? Or was this person taken from the Americas, placed on Papua New Guinea, and this person, or someone that looks like her, placed in the Americas to replace the void? Here you have a child from Vanuatu again, the islands around Australia, by the Solomon Islands. You have someone from North America. And here you have a little girl from Africa. Now you can see who resembles who and who doesn't. Indonesia. When you say Indonesia, you never see black people, right? This is an Indonesian man. Now I want you to look how he looks just like Magic Johnson. Look at those cheeks. Now look at the West African. Look how Magic Johnson has a giant face. Look how the West African has a small face. That's not fair. But if we go backwards and compare the famous actor from Benin, West Africa, and this man from Nigeria, West Africa, they look alike. I'll click it backwards. I'll click it forward. They look alike. Just like these two men look alike. Here you have someone from Nigeria. Look at the knobs that come out on his forehead like little fucking horns. No offense, like someone fucked a goat in his family and he looks like he's got two little knobs that want to come out like they're fucking goat horns. Look at the man from North America. Look at the man from Efrate Islands. Efrate Island. It looks like the guy from North America said, I'm leaving North America, and went and lived on an island. They look like freaking twins. Look how red this guy is. Look how black. Look at, in sunlight, he gives off a shade that is not red. You can see the black, you can see the overlay. You can see that he's a black man, you can see the red overlay. You can see his beard. You can see he drew on his face so he looks like he has a beard. Here's someone from New Caledonia. Here's someone that looks like saying, hi, I'm from McDonald's. You can see how they have the same cheek structure. It doesn't matter that the tones aren't the same. The teeth are the same. They're related somehow. And when you look at the person from Mali, black as night. The cheekbones, not the same. The smile, not the same. The teeth are not aligned the same. Not to mention, this woman has feathers in her hair, and she's not worried about earrings. And this woman has rings everywhere, all throughout. This man from New Caledonia, this man from Central America. Look at the man from West Africa. They look nothing alike. Come on. You can do this on your own. Now, let's go back to that one, because that's very... Everybody in that picture had dark skin, right? So let's toy with that one for a second. Alright. Now, do you see how he has very small cheekbones in the center? Do you see how he has very big smile, very small cheekbones? Vanuatu, North America. West Africa. You see how the people of the islands, where we're not really supposed to be unless you consider it one of the four corners, you see how he looks just like the guy from North America, the famous actor. You'd never think LeBron James had such unique cheekbones until you looked at the man from Papua New Guinea. Now, by the time LeBron James is in his 50s, he's going to look exactly like the man from Papua New Guinea. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny they titled his name King James, right? Here's the man from West Africa. Now, yeah, there are black people here that look like this. But they ain't spread to the four corners of the earth. That's the key. So, I mean, there's plenty of niggas that look like this Central African here in America. But look how this specific weird looking nigga look just like this man that's on the damn island. Sure, some African Americans are African. But this is crazy how all these niggas, how all these Negroes match all these people of the islands. Now, two very distinctive looks. Now you see this man from the Congo. He kind of looked like, what's his face, right? Eddie Griffith, right? But then here you have, what, Friday after next, and you have a man from Papua New Guinea. Now look how their features match. There's another type of man from Papua New Guinea. So, see what's going on? Now, menace to society, Pentecost Island. I'm a Pentecost Christian. Where'd they get the name Pentecost from? Well, it must have to do with the Israelites. And look at this Israelite spread to the four corners of the earth. Right? Now, plenty of people here in the Americas look like this Central African. Right? His face even looks like one of those Olmec heads. African. Related to Canaanites. Should we even say African, or should we just say Hamitic? Hamitic, Shemitic. Shemitic in North America, Shemitic in Papua New Guinea. New Guinea. I'm gonna let it play. It's getting old. Now, you see what happened when Africans do braids and twists? I thought I was gonna let it play. Now, don't that remind you of Coolio? Now, Shirley Hemp Hill. It's a hill of marijuana. And this woman from Fiji. Now, look at the two Ethiopians, how they look alike. And they do not look like the brown African American. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, that woman's beautiful. But she's still Ethiopian. I mean, you know. I mean, they're all pretty, but, you know, that woman on the left is wild. So they walking around, look at that dude. Walking around with a gun with his dick out. That don't make no sense.
Alright, so in this section we're going to be talking about creating zombies. Now the elites and the oligarchs have already chosen the people that will be the zombies. And they've already set in motion the propaganda campaigns to dehumanize this race of people. Let's take a look at this first article. It says, brain and eyeball eating cannibal who hacked homeless man to death says sorry. In this article it says, heart eating Maryland cannibal pleads guilty to murder. Here in the Huffington Post it says, Rudy Eugene, no bad salts, only marijuana found in face eater toxicology tests. Then we have the New York Times reporting there is no time to rest until the last zombie in Africa is toast.
Now you see what's going on. They want you to consider yourselves African Americans so you have no connection to your heritage, and that you, over a period of time, considerably 500 years, will regress into a state of violence. Now, when you regress into this state of violence, they will broadcast that you are infected. They will then use military force to cut you down. I have warned you of this over and over again. If you can't see the pattern being laid, it doesn't make sense. It's basically, there's train tracks going from the East Coast to the West Coast, and if you can't look back outside of the box and see the tracks will eventually connect, then you are fucking toast. And what did it say at the end of that? Africans will be toast. Africa is toast. You see it right there? I ain't making that shit up. These are fucking news reports. There is no time to rest until the last zombie in Africa is toast. I don't care that it's about a video game. They're speaking to you about Africans and zombies. They keep using diseases to fuck with your brain, because you're in an experimental lab, because you allow them to continuously rule over you. You don't have to fight back. You have to walk the fuck out. When you go to school, the school gets state money because you sat there in homeroom when they did the head count. Going to a homeroom in school is participation. They don't give a fuck if you graduate. They care if you participate. Walking out of this country, whether by yourself, in a small group, or in a large group, is lack of participation. That means they have no control over you. Or you sit here and let them keep feeding you fucking diseases.
Until the last zombie in Africa is toast. Here we have a screenshot of The Walking Dead, where in all the intros you have a close-up of a black zombie. Currently we have what they call the Zika virus that has been spreading. Here in the USA Today they claim that it's scarier than they initially thought. Here is a map of how they believe the Zika virus spread. There has been new reports now that the Zika virus is not spread by mosquito, but is sexually transmitted. Here in this article it says, is Zika virus or the Tdap vaccine causing birth defects in Brazil?
They told you how the Zika virus was spread. It has nothing to do with child defects. It's a military weapon, and it's spread through fake mosquitoes. They have robotic mosquitoes. DARPA has designed them. I don't have the paperwork to prove this is how it's spread. They send these things into vectors. If you listen to what they say about HIV, HIV is what? Spread through vectors. That's not vagina and penis. That's an area. How do you infect an area? You design a weapon of infection. You can't run around with a fucking hypodermic needle and jab everybody, but everybody in the summertime expects a fucking mosquito to bite them.
Mosquito, but is sexually transmitted. Here in this article it says, is Zika virus or the Tdap vaccine causing birth defects in Brazil? Currently, the Zika virus has reached North America, and Nevada health officials have recently reported their first case of the Zika virus. For more information, you can do a Google search for the 30 American cities most at risk for Zika virus. Here's an illustration of the abnormal head size of the children that are born with the Zika virus.
Now, if you study cephaly, the word head, phalli, that is a word that is connected to what? Reproduction. It has to do, small heads has to do with your mate's chromosomes. It don't have nothing to do with no fucking mosquito. It doesn't even have to deal with the weapon they're using against you. Remember the Hindu, dare I say, one of the Hindu gods They ran around with a necklace of human heads around their neck. The heads were shrunken heads. Haven't you ever heard of, oh, what kind of witchcraft is this to do? Shrunken heads? It's not witchcraft. It's fallen angel chromosome inside of someone's bloodline. Being revealed because why? We asked for God to take away the veil. The veil is everybody's chromosome is normal. Now the veil's taken away. Now the chromosomes are disrupted. Now if you're human, you'll breed a human child. If you're a man, you'll breed a son of man. Now if you're infected by fallen angel DNA, we'll see more children with tails.
Here's another image, and here's another image. Now, the Zika virus birth defects are not the only birth defects that you should worry about. I do recommend you do a Google search for depleted uranium birth defects. I also recommend you do a Google search for birth defects from Agent Orange. Now, there's also something called jigger disease that hasn't been getting any mainstream coverage, and I do recommend you go and educate yourself about it, just in case you're traveling to a third world country, or somehow this becomes the next widespread disease. In this section, I want to talk about why, according to white society, a dog's life is more valuable than the African American. Here we have a man who got a 6.5-year prison sentence for killing a dog, while George Zimmerman got no prison time. Here we have a story of a man who got 11 years in prison for cocaine that killed the police dogs, while the police officers that shot Tamir Rice got no charges, no prison time. Here we have another story of a man who got prison time for killing a dog, but the officer that choked out and killed Eric Garner got no prison time, no charges. Here we have a 16-year-old boy who shot a retired police dog and got 23 years in jail, but a white police officer that shot an unarmed couple through their windshield 137 times, no charges, no prison time, let him go free. Here we have a story of a man who was jailed for stabbing a bull terrier to death, but the police officers that shot and killed Kamani Gray, no charges. Alright, so now let's take a look at my final thoughts. When we take a closer look at the so-called African American, we find a group that is easily distracted, easily discouraged. A group that is not focused on generational wealth and survival, but on building on other people's empire and consuming their products. A group that is looking for a messiah and fails to understand that change is a group effort, and revolution is hard work and requires sacrifices. The African American has no control over their women, who are currently the #1 killers by way of abortions. A female that has been socially engineered to lack shame, modesty, to hate black genetics and black leadership.
Hold on, we gotta read that one again. You got unbelievable.
Fails to understand that change is a group effort, and revolution is hard work and requires sacrifices. The African American has no control over their women, who are currently
abortion. This is about African Americans, right? They show you a little black baby, right? Abortion has killed more black Americans than crime. Abortion has killed more black Americans than accidents. Now you understand what falls under crime, right? You understand what falls under accidents. Crime is murder, theft, robbery, murder, death, kill. We're talking about death, right? Abortion has killed more black Americans than accidents. Car accidents, bus accidents, plane accidents, any kind of accident. Black women have killed more black Americans than cancer. The harlot. Let's clear this up, because not every black woman's a harlot. The harlot of black skin has killed more black Americans than even AIDS. Why should I care if someone has something to say if they don't care about themselves? I'm trying to help a group of people and push them away from these egos. Egoless, we must travel.
The #1 killers by way of abortions. A female that has been socially engineered to lack shame, modesty, to hate black genetics and black leadership. A female that has become the gatekeeper of white hegemony, for it rewards her for being a single mother, for having children out of wedlock, for...
You see that? You see this old ass kid holding his mom's titties?
For it rewards her for...
Now she thought that was so cute, she posted her toddler son, who don't drink milk no more, holding her own titties while she stands there naked. And you don't think this is fucking trifling?
Being a single mother, for having children out of wedlock, for divorcing, and for being strong and independent. It goes without saying
Look
that
at
not
that
all African American women...
Stretch marks and all.
A female that has become the gatekeeper of white hegemony, for it rewards her for being a single mother.
You don't even have to be a superstar anymore to be the gatekeeper of white hegemony. Listen to him, and we'll stop on that crusty ass again.
To hate black genetics and black leadership. A female that has become the gatekeeper of white hegemony.
I try to lead you in all these black trifling women. I don't hear any comments I don't hear any negative comments from solid black women. I hear trifling women talking shit to me.
Rewards her for being a single mother, for having children out of wedlock, for divorcing.
Now look at that. Stretch marks and all. This woman acts like the male walking around. See her with a shopping cart? She's in public, walking around with her ass crack showing. Just like the faggot male, the simp male.
And for being strong and independent. It goes without saying that not all African American women and men are part of the problem.
Not all people that are melanated are the problem. But the people that are not the problem do absolutely nothing to stop the problem. And when someone does, attempts to take leadership and lead you in the right direction, what do? You bitch, you cry, you complain, as if you have control over the whole. This is my motherfucking channel, and you come here with a trifling look, a trifling attitude, with this Indian mentality that what mine is yours. Like my sperm is yours, and you can choose what I can do with it. You people are nasty. Not all of you, the ones that came with that mentality. And what happens is when I open my mouth about it, the ones that haven't talked, that have that mentality, show themselves. And just like I'll shake other people's beehive, I don't mind shaking mine one bit. That's why I left the message. If you don't like this shit, unsubscribe, get the fuck out of here so I can see it reflect in the numbers. I don't charge you for this. If you feel like I'm ridiculing you, that's because something in your personality is fucked up, and I already brought it to attention. And all you're doing by arguing with me is trying to say it's okay to act like a fucking heathen. That's what you're saying to everybody. It's okay that I kill these fucking babies in my womb and shit them out so companies can put them in fucking products. What are we drinking in Pepsi? Black fucking babies. I don't see the men at the abortion clinic saying, cut my nuts up. You don't have to have burnt hair to get an abortion. You have to not give a fuck about your own egg being converted into a life form. what it was put there for in the first place. Shameless.
Vast majority are. A toxic mindset has spread throughout the so-called African American community, similar to a virus. What the African American fails to understand is that if he's going in a direction unhindered, no roadblocks, no smoke screens, then he's going in the wrong direction. And it doesn't matter how many Afrocentric scholars and books he quotes, it still won't change the out of Africa theory into a fact. How many times do these people have to spit in the face of the African American for him to realize they're not his friends and are not looking out for his best interest? Of course, it goes without saying.
They're your oppressors. Look what they do to your children. Different taste in music justify all-white prom? Ridiculous. Now, isn't that funny? In Georgia, the home of the peach, the home of the weeping willow tree, we don't want to play Beyonce or Rihanna. We don't want to play Drake anymore. We'll play some Justin Timberlake, though. Different taste in music. This is just racism. All white prom? So there was no prom for the black children in 2013. So all those black kids that heard about prom all the years before, as they are going through their 4 years of high school, they're sitting there getting excited. Oh, prom night, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Oh, we're going to dress up, we're going to go to dinner, we're going to make love. So the white kids and the white staff, whether they got black staff or not, the staff went along with it. They got together and said, well, because there's such a different taste in music, we're just going to have an all-white prom.
For him to realize they're not his friends and are not looking out for his best interest. Of course, it goes without saying that not all white people and foreigners are bad. However, they're not going to stop what they're doing to protect you from the racist elites and bankers.
That's why I said, if those people were imprisoned, more white people would just take their place. You allow your nation to be overthrown when you're free. You said, I will subject myself to the government. The government made laws to put you in specific zip codes so that you would be poisoned by different types of factory chemicals. Now they've gone through excessive ways and spent billions of dollars to try to sterilize you, and all this is to steal the land. The Lord said, if you die, He'll just raise up rocks. Everybody thinks that means rock men walking around. No, that means He'll just raise up the foundation and destroy everything. And you hear the birth pangs of the earth trembling right now, and you just don't care. That is the heathen in you, saying, I don't give a fuck. Survival of the fittest. Yet, during survival of the fittest, you will be cut down because you're nothing but a dumb heathen. You've spent your time thinking about sex, drugs, and rap. The only thing that'll get you anywhere in that self-defense is your little pistol for your rap, your little pistol for your drugs, and your little pistol in your pants that you keep trying to show at your belt line. We are regressing as a whole. Some of us surface, and then the other crabs try to pull them down. I'm a male. I try to lead you. Look how many women interfere with that. They enjoy their negative status. They enjoy the money that comes from these rulers for separating you from your children. If you have a good woman, these videos aren't about you. If you preach black supremacy, these videos are for you. We must preach God. God's laws. This is why I highlighted them. Then you argue that they don't exist while I tell you to read along with me. You are ready to be firewood, and you do not see it.
And most definitely, they're not going to revert back to their non-white status just to show the African American they have good intentions. The so-called African American is the Aboriginal American. He is the Native American. Now, can we build alliances with African nations? Of course. But to claim Africa is our homeland is not only ignoring the truth, but it is throwing away our heritage and history.
Here, since these go so fast, and you're probably too lazy to look up this video yourself.
Alliances with African nations? Of course. But to claim
Frederick Douglass, the idea of deporting his people received his greatest scorn. This is Frederick Douglass. The idea of deporting Frederick Douglass's people received Frederick Douglass's greatest scorn. All this native talk is nonsense. The native land of American Negro is America. His bones, his muscle, his sinews, all American. Stop. His ancestors for 270 years have lived, labored, and died on American soil. Millions of his posterity have inherited Caucasian blood. Shrewdly, he counted on the fact that the white South did not want to expel its workers. The landowners of the South want the labor of the Negro on the hardest possible terms, including perpetual servitude.
Africa is our homeland is not only ignoring the truth.
Martin Luther King. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles. Manacles, those are the, octopus arms. Of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished, laying around dying in the corners, four corners. He's talking to you in a special way and you don't get it. In the corners of America's society to find himself in exile in his own land.
But it is throwing away our heritage.
W.E.B. Du Bois. Communism envisages. Socialism is spreading all over the world, and even in the United States. Against the spread of socialism, one modern institution is working desperately, and that is colonialism. And colonialism has been and is and will be one of the chief causes of war. Leading this new colonial imperialism comes my own native land, built by my fathers, then toiled and blood. The United States. United States is a great nation, rich by the grace of God and prosperous by the hard work of its humblest citizens. Drunk with power, we are leading the world to hell in a new colonialism with the same old human slavery which once ruined us. The same old slavery that once ruined us Did he just say his people was enslaved before? See, without reading all these other books, you'd never understand what this man is saying. This nation was built by his forefathers. Then they had to toil, and then they had their own bloodshed.
In history, there's a saying that the mind is like a parachute. It only works when open. And it is only when the African American opens his mind will the process of breaking the chains of oppression begin.
How many times have I stated to you, pray for brains?
Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to share, like, subscribe, and leave your comments below and let me know what your thoughts are and why they created the African American. Until next time, this is Conspiracy Dude.
When you ask yourself questions on the slave trade, your indwelling intelligence will kick out the correct answers. If the people were packed in like sardines, how did they eat and drink? What did they eat and drink? What about body waste? You mean to tell me that these people just pissed and shit on each other for months? And remember, shit is toxic. If the people were packed in like sardines, how did they eat and drink? What did they eat and drink? What about body waste? You mean to tell me that these people just pissed and shit on each other for months? And remember, shit is toxic. If the people were packed in like sardines, how did they eat and drink? What did they eat and drink? What about body waste? You mean to tell me that these people just pissed and shit on each other for months? And remember, shit is toxic. If the people were packed in like sardines, how did they eat and drink? What did they eat and drink? What about body waste? You mean to tell me that these people just pissed and shit on each other for months? And remember, shit is toxic. If the people were packed in like sardines, and remember, shit is toxic. If the people were packed in like sardines, how did they eat and drink? What did they eat and drink? What about body waste? You mean to tell me that these people just pissed and shit on each other for months? And remember, shit is toxic. If the people were packed in like sardines, how did they eat and drink? What did they eat and drink? What about body waste? You mean to tell me that these people just pissed and shit on each other for months? And remember, shit is toxic.
Let's go back for a second. I want you to see this boat crossing the Atlantic. Alright? Now I'm going to mute this for a second. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 12. That at the time ye were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, the strangers from the covenant of the promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now, in Christ Jesus, who sometimes ye were sometimes far off, ye who sometimes were far off, made close, made nigh by the blood of Christ. For he is our peace, who hath made both one, Babylonian, and hath broken down the middle wall of partition between us. Did you see how that ship looked on the waves? It is standing almost straight up. Who hath broke down the wall of partition. Let me do this again. Made us both one, and hath broken down the middle wall of partition. Do you see that boat standing straight fucking up? How you gonna take slaves across that shit? Some old raggedy fucking boat. Every time you hit a fucking wave, a new splinter goes right up your ass. Get the fuck out of here with that shit. Get out of here with that shit.
You mean to tell me that these people just pissed and shit on each other for months? And remember, shit is toxic.
done. She had to get some face work, some nose work and stuff like that. So for some reason she said that and believe me, Hollywood does look at certain things like that. They always in some type of competition or even in some ritualistic thing that they're dealing with. Because we're talking about secret societies. And basically, because she was a natural beauty and she had the actual talent, she could actually act. It was like, this is the true American beauty, so they took her out. And so the first thing I asked when I get in contact with these particular spirits, well, what line of spirit, what system did you come from? Did you come from Egypt? Did you come from India? What system did you come from? Or what ancient civilization? She said she never came from Africa, Egypt, or India. She was always on the Western Hemisphere. So basically, she said that basically her line came from the whole Maya, Toltec, Olmec type thing. So she was always in the Western Hemisphere. You know, it's just so much mysteries that not all of us are West African. This is something. Let me give you an example.
All right, look. I picked a video that said African Americans ain't African. I can't help that the author A.B. Aboriginal, the legend, uses this brother's stuff, but he does. And, you know, you can see all the pagan shit back there. I don't agree with his religion or his spiritual beliefs. I don't even care about this spirit shit he's talking. I just picked this video because of the title.
When I went to Cleveland, Ohio last year...
okay, well, that's close to me, so I'm going to listen for a second.
First of last year, I think it was the first of 2007. There's a brother there that's I've been knowing him for years. Real gifted brother as far as has a lot of knowledge and he does a lot of research. And he asked me, did I know about some African Heritage Foundation chartered out of England with all white members? And I said, no, I never heard of it. He said, what it was, it's an African Heritage Foundation chartered out of England with all white members. And their thing was to write a history where they to make a continental black person to take away from the global black person. So in so many words, the thing was to focus on Africa, to wipe out that we were a global people. You see what I'm saying?
To wipe out the mental history. That's why they burned all your books. That's why they said you're not allowed to read until we can find all your books. It's all about land theft.
It was all over the globe and everybody else came from that. So as a result now, this thing works to this day, and some of your Afrocentric concepts and stuff came from these people in Europe. They think that, you know, we all West African and based on a continental type thing. Whereas we finding out now, I mean, we were all over the planet.
Chinese came in, mixed in with them, and produced what you're calling Native Americans today or Indians. And the Caucasian gave them all our rights. Now they walk around saying Cherokee, Choctaw, Shinnecock, Cheyenne, and we walk around saying African, African, African. Now they walk around saying Cherokee, Choctaw, Shinnecock, Cheyenne, and we walk around saying African, African, African. Now they walk around saying Cherokee, Choctaw, Shinnecock, Cheyenne, and we walk around saying African, African, African.
And the early English settlers who were called, class? Pilgrims. That's right, the Pilgrims. Very good. The Penguins. Who said that? Mr. Stiles. That's me. How is it you are?
Now, all those black kids, I know this is a movie, all those black kids know that if they tell who did that, he gonna get in trouble. Now watch what every black kid do.
The Penguins. Who said that?
Everybody ratted. Y'all was all trained to rat each other out. Not one of you can keep your fucking mouth shut. There is no such thing in the black community as a secret.
Mr. Styles.
That's me.
How is it you always have something funny to say?
Because I'm a comedian.
Would you like to come up and teach the class?
Yeah, I can do that.
Very well, come on up. Instruct us.
Now, do you hear the hate and animosity in the teacher? Now you have a white teacher, isn't this how you grew up? In a black neighborhood, who hates coming in that black neighborhood every day. And why does she hate the black neighborhood? Because of the adults. And what does she do? She comes to teach the black children, and she knows they're going to grow up into what? Black adults who she is going to hate. So already, when she gets out of the fucking car, she's going to teach lies to people that she fucking hates.
And what will be the basis of your lecture?
What?
What are you going to talk about?
Tell you if you let me talk, sure. Okay, alright, does anybody know what the name of this place is?
That's Africa, I know that.
That's right, that's Africa. But did you know that Africa is the place where the body of the first man was found? My daddy says that makes it the place where all people originated from. That means everybody's really from Africa. Everybody. All y'all. Everybody.
I ain't from Africa, I'm from Crenshaw Mafia.
Like it, now you're from Africa.
I'm from Africa, you from Africa, you African booty scratcher.
What is going on with this out of Africa theory?
But that smoke alarm went off. Let me go back to this. I want you to show you the end of this one more time.
My daddy says that makes it the place where all people originated from. That means everybody's really from Africa. Everybody. All y'all. Everybody.
I ain't from Africa, I'm from Crenshaw Mafia.
Now watch this. The children laugh. Now watch him walk over in an intimidating fashion. An intimidating fashion. Now watch.
Like it, now you're from Africa.
I'm from Africa, you from Africa, you African booty scratcher.
What is going on with this out of Africa theory? Well, the beginnings of this theory starts with the founders of eugenics. Most people don't look at Charles Darwin as the founder of eugenics. They look at his cousin, Francis Galton, as the founder of eugenics. But Charles Darwin and Thomas Huxley were the founders of the base of the out of Africa theory. In the material called The Descent of Man, Darwin was the first European to speculate that humans descended from apes and began to eventually evolve through the processes of natural selection and walk upright. And he labeled those particular great apes or hominids as African. Right?
Natural selection of the chosen race. That's what it's actually called. See, it's not natural selection by God or anything like that. It's natural selection of the chosen race. Chosen. I select myself to be the chosen race. That's what he wrote.
And a direct quote from him from The Descent of Man says, "In each great region of the world, the living mammals are closely related to the extinct species of the same region. It is therefore probable that Africa was formerly inhabited by extinct apes closely allied to the gorilla and chimpanzee, and as these two species are now man's nearest allies, it is somewhat more probable that our early progenitors lived on the African continent than elsewhere. But it is useless to speculate on this subject for an ape nearly as large as a man, namely the Dryopithecus of Lartet, which was closely allied to the Anthropomorphus Hylobates."
So this is what they want you to believe. That the Negro is related to the ape through sex. Eventually the Irish is spawned. and then the evolution of the Irish into the Anglo-Teutonic.
Existed in other parts of the planet. He goes on to talk about...
This is why it starts, Iberians are believed to have been originally an African race who thousands of years ago spread themselves through Spain over Western Europe. Their remains are found in the barrows or burying places in sundry parts of these countries. The skulls, something progenitor's type. They came to Ireland and mixed with the natives. Okay, if they mix with the natives, that means they're what? They say the Iberians came and mixed with the natives of South and West, who themselves are supposed to have been blah 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 type of descendants of savages of the something of the Stone Age,
Europe and other places. But they proposed this. So the out of Africa theory comes from Charles Darwin. The reason why Charles Darwin is
who consequence of violation from the rest of the world had... I can't read the rest of that.
Francis Galton is the founder of modern day eugenics, and eugenics is the concept of the
compromised in their healthy struggle of life and thus made way according to the laws of nature, the laws of screwing. That's what they're talking about.
Self-controlled evolution of the races on this planet. The self-control, meaning that one group of people will control the evolutionary destiny of another group of people.
Isn't that what it's always been about right here? White hegemony. If they don't control this, they will be eradicated through sex. And that's what people don't understand. See, look. Race characteristics do not die out. You see this? They do not die out. You cannot mix something out. It's impossible. A 4-generation portrait chart. They show it's an Indian. Suggestion of Indians marked. The eyes are dark gray hazel. There's a little bit of gray hazel in the dark eyes. The hair is dark. See this? It's marked red, like it's got a red overtone. Dark red, medium blonde, or red blonde, and it's marked dark, medium dark red. You see half a box there? You see that X'd in? You see that fully checked in? I'm sure there's some kind of example on the book at what each sign means. You see how underneath each person some shit is checked in, some isn't? The eye looks like the eye. The square is the hair. The circle is what type of person. So, this person, see everything, how it comes? She's an Indian with dark eyes and dark hair. And then it breaks down 4 generations of mating, what it equates to. Example of inherited characteristics. So, if Europeans can show you examples of inherited characteristics of themselves, why can we not see the examples of inherited characteristics of ourselves?
Through whatever means that they're going to use, which is usually through the institution set up in a society to make sure that those particular people become an asset and a collateral for the gentry.
Collateral. That's stock. Alright? If a store has stock, it's stocked up. It's got net worth. Its value isn't in cash. Its value is in product. If you're counting people, if you've got enough to lift, that's net worth. That's stock.
The evolutionary destiny of another group of people. Through whatever...
That's cultural hegemony.
Self-control, meaning that one group of people will control the evolutionary destiny of another group of people. through whatever means that they're going to use, which is usually through the institution set up in a society to make sure that those particular people become an asset and a collateral for the gentry.
Institution set up on a society. Municipalities. Courts on soil. Utilizing laws of the sea. We're not on the fucking sea. Why aren't we utilizing laws of Europe? Don't fucking say we are. Because we're not ruled by European law. We're ruled by the law of the sea. That means they were either born on a boat, which does not make them natural citizens, or they were born on land that has sunk under the sea. That makes them either the children of Lemuria or the children of the island of Mu. If their whole goal was look for Atlantis, they're still trying to fight the Atlanteans. And if you think I'm bullshitting by saying that, then you've got a lot of fucking research to study.
All right. So now, when you look at black people all across the planet, original people all across the planet, various nationalities, they are on the bottom. Now, you say, well, there are successful black people on the planet. Yes, there are, but they are not contending with the psychological and the institutional genocide that is being implemented on them, or the banning of their natural law systems in their ancient forms or in their successful forms, in the sense that they will compete with the rest of the world for self-sustaining without the tutelage of white folks or other groups of people who are of the same gene pool.
What rich black person has started a black community in modern times? Teach their own people, buy their own products, sell their own. Remember, if Coolio started a black community, he's the fucking mayor. He's the fucking governor, right? If Will Smith starts a black community based off his fucking money, he's the fucking... He controls it, right? Which black person has said, let's separate from white society and I'll start the community and all that shit? Yeah, my smoke alarm should go off again. None. No black people want that. Instead, what they would rather do is they would rather try to focus you on you and your money on their attention, because they still got to pay homage to the people that put them in what? Power. Bill Cosby tried to buy a TV station. He didn't try to start a fucking school.
A group of people. So Charles Darwin offered this, and now you have African scholars and others who are using this eugenicist family as the basis for their scientific claims.
Now they walk around saying Cherokee, Choctaw, Shinnecock, Cheyenne, and we walk around saying African. Now they walk around saying Cherokee, Choctaw, Shinnecock, Cheyenne, and we walk around saying African.
All right, I'm gonna stop there. You've heard from the Aboriginal legend. If you haven't heard his stuff, you have now. Now there is, I think he goes by his first name on their channel. I think it's Terry. I think it's Terry Sanders. Excuse me, if I didn't say his name right.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of An American Deception. I'm your host, Red Tail Hawk, also known as Tavis Sanders.
Tavis Sanders. So you can find him. I think it's let's see. There's AB Legend. Black Child didn't do his today. 432 drop. Let us find the truth. Khalil. CDF. There's a lot of good ones. Truth 777. But Terry Carter? No, it's not Terry Carter. That might be it. The original. But there's a lot of Aboriginal artists that try to show you the truth. Nope, this is just a different artist. I think you could find it under there, Travis Sanders. So Travis Sanders has a channel. You just type in Travis Sanders, and it'll take you to his channel. And then the channel where he and his mom teaches, you can find through this. This might just be the channel where he and his mom teaches. But check them out. Subscribe to them. You guys know Khalil's channel. If you don't, it's there for you. And we didn't show any of his today, but we're going to be showing a lot of Let Us Find the Truth. Now, all of these authors are spending their time building videos to show you the truth. You don't even have to find the truth because these guys are showing it to you. The problem is when they link scripture to what they're showing you, you are not happy. Because it shows that to a great degree you are not doing what the Bible says. Again, some other artists that are over here. Baptized A Scribe. He has a lot of good videos. You see Rob Rack down here. I do not suggest Judah Nazareth. That seems like a waste of time. When you scroll down, excuse me. Oh, I wanted to highlight this. It should be on screen. Baptized A Scribe. Look at one of his videos. If you have a large penis, your ancient granny was a freak. Black people made a deal with the devil. These are important videos to watch. And people don't respect these authors because they're telling you the truth. They're combining the history of what happened with Columbus. They're combining pre-Columbian history with the Bible. They're doing exactly as the Lord has shown them to do. God doesn't have to come down and say, I want you to make videos. He has to put the thought in your mind. We don't sit here and pick titles. We're all preaching the same fucking thing. Now, how do all these strangers, all these people that don't know each other, preach the same thing? Have you ever wondered that? How do all these people preach the same thing? They don't know each other. Very few of them converse with each other. When they try to converse, most of them insult each other. How are they all preaching the same thing, the same week, the same month? Where's the little... I was looking for that scripture. It's Ecclesiastic something that You know, captivity drives a wise man insane. But it's alright. We'll find it another day. Look, unsubscribe. I don't care if there's 30 viewers. I'm not gonna change. I'm not changing. You gotta change. More. Here's this ratchet woman who says she exposed me. And I love this because there's plenty of videos that people say they exposed me and they didn't expose anything. Now listen very carefully.
Observe it here.
Exposing me. Oh, why is that doing that now?
Alright, what's up YouTube? This is Conscious Observer here. You know, I don't make videos. You know, I just like to come on YouTube, you know, listen to, you know, a couple of the people I'm subscribed to, and then go on about my business. But I seen that Lex made a 59-minute and 9-second video just totally talking trash about me in response to my comments that exposed his mother being a white woman and his father being black and him being a mulatto.
Okay, so we're not even gonna waste too much time with that. Me as a YouTube author, I should never have to put my family on film. I should never have to deal with people that say this or that with no evidence to verify anything that they say. Can you come over here? All right. Now I'm gonna ask you a question. Now, stop. Is it okay if I put your image on film?
Yeah.
I can just put the camera on your face?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is my mom. Mom, I just played a video in the basement where a woman says that you're white.
That's a joke.
What are you classified as?
Black.
Is your hair stringy or wool? It's wool. This is a picture of who? Can you tell me who that is?
My mother.
That is your mother.
Gertrude Marie Varner.
Gertrude Marie Varner. Now, growing up, I thought she was German until she brought, what, a Czechoslovakia shirt, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. Who is this man in this picture?
My daddy.
With blue eyes?
Yeah.
Tell me about your father.
Huh. What do you want to know?
What does his parents look like? Cornel.
My grandmother was dark. Her sister was light. My grandfather was brown skinned.
So grandma was darker than grandpa.
Yeah.
And grandma's sister, who had nothing to do with her husband, was light.
Right.
Right. Okay. And grandpa has blue eyes?
Yeah.
So hold that up again. This is Grandpa Fred, and he's a brown-skinned man, and he's got blue eyes.
Look at my eyes.
Well, it doesn't matter your eyes, because there's a black woman on YouTube saying that you're a Caucasian, even though you're not classified as Caucasian.
I'm half Indian and half black. More Indian than I am black. But this again, I'm black Indian.
But there's also the Czechoslovakia piece that's in you.
Well, before it was Czechoslovakia, Czechoslovakia was taken over by Russians. Then the Germans came in. It was another country. So they were invaded 3 or 4 times.
So they were invaded just like the Indians here were invaded. So the same thing happened over there that happened over here.
Yeah, they was forced out, papers taken away from them, land taken away from them, property taken away from them, birth, everything that they could take away from them, they took away from them and made them hit the hills.
Made them go into the hills.
Yeah. My mother's sister. My mother's sister lost her toes. Lost 3 toes from escaping.
And one more time with your. Let's see your father. Look at that. Okay.
No, that's my poppy.
Thanks.
Oh, you want me to go get a picture of Granny? I'll go get a picture of Granny.
No, these people don't need to see my family. It's disgusting that they would sit there and say shit with not knowing anything about anybody's family and run their fucking mouth as if they're some kind of God's gift, when in God's own word, they're a fucking abomination. And again, it's not their skin, it's their heritage that they don't appreciate to know. So now she went and made a 39-minute video exposing me and my Caucasian mom.
To my comments that exposed his mother being a white woman and his father being black and him being a mulatto.
Now, I can go get my grandpa on the phone and say, hey, Grandpa, there's a girl online saying that my mom is white, that your daughter's white. Will you come up here and bring your beautiful blue eyes on camera and say that, hey, my daughter's not white? Come on. You're so fucking immature. Stay out of my fucking business.
It equals destruction. Everybody on the planet can see that except the African American. So when I myself will point out some things to an African American or the group, I know what to expect. I know what to expect, like a schedule, like it's a schedule. It's always on time.
Always on time.
The scholarship is always shoddy. There's always high emotions. They're going to interject ad hominem. They're going to interject things that you did not even say.
Now, dare I say this? I think Saeed watched the video where I said the same thing he said. And he watched your reaction. Dare I say, I think. I don't communicate with this man. I've attempted to communicate with this man. Now look at your reactions to the series of videos. Again, this is the second, maybe the third, actually it's the 5th time I've done this series of videos. We are not all Israel. In fact, only a small percentage claims the true blood. And we don't even have a way to test this. Because the people that don't want Israelites to resurface control the testing.
The ability for the African American to not be able to smell his own shit is
it's a fucking curse. How can you not see the trouble you start constantly? How can you not stop the people that cause trouble under the title African American? 30 people in the street watch 5 people fight. 30 divided by 5 is 6. If 6 people grabbed those 5 people and stopped those 5 African Americans from fighting and counseled them right there, that's the start of a change. But instead, the 30 people watching the 5 people act fucking ridiculous would rather cheer because it's a free show. Then you get a reporter in there saying, look at these niggas. Look at how these niggas act by themselves. Black on black crime.
Only be labeled as an historical failure. It's an historical failure of epic proportions. Now, when some of the people that are part of this group do smell the shit and say, hey, our shit stinks, we need to do something here,
what happens to them?
The whole bombard this individual.
That's called ostracification. Hey, stop saying we as niggas is doing wrong. You that said that, stick your fucking head in the sand like an ostrich. You're shunned by the black community.
I say this because what you're going to realize is that people are going to start choosing sides. And people don't get this. What do you mean by choosing sides? Yeah. People are going to start choosing sides to disassociate themselves from the African American. Why? Because nobody wants to be labeled as a moron.
Hey, you know what? This is a good time to read the wrong scripture. This scripture needs to be read. And people need to understand. First off, in the last series of videos, I didn't tell you to leave your woman. I said analyze who you mate with, because this book says don't sow unto thorns. If you're a man that has dark skin, no matter what nation you're of, if you're married to a woman with dark skin, and you guys have a solid relationship, then these fucking videos ain't for you. They're not. If you're married, you have a solid relationship, and you don't live like a heathen, then what is the point of saying that you're a heathen? You're already showing through action you're not living like a heathen, no matter what nation you are. Let's pretend I'm Canaanite. If I'm Canaan, I am to reject my forefathers. If I want to go to heaven, I have to reject my forefathers. Moab and Ammon are pushed aside. They are not allowed in heaven. They are not going to stop pretending that they're Israel and leading you astray. The Canaanites have a chance. Moab and Ammon are Hebrew. They're the children of Lot that chose to not let their cousins pass on the land. They're blood relatives. And that's why they are kicked from heaven. The Canaanites aren't kicked from heaven. You have to get rid of the abominable ways. Multi-God worship. Listen to yourself. I worship God and Christ. God said there's no Savior besides God. Christians taught you that Jesus is your Savior. Some woman wrote me today saying, I'm going to unsubscribe and hope you follow God and His Son. God does not have sons that give salvation. God said He is the only one that gives salvation. So you said you're unsubscribing and you're leaving? Go. Be gone. All those that have the same mentality as her, go. Be gone. Hit the unsubscribe number so we can see the numbers drop down. This is a reduction of you. I've done this on purpose. I don't need 6,000 fucking wallflowers sitting around not doing any goddamn thing. Useless. I need preachers. I need men that are going to go to their enemies and say, salvation awaits. Throw away your God, throw away your nation. Isaiah chapter 2. The word that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass, past, present, or future. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains. In the mountains. Got to go to the top, and then in the mountains is the door. established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all the nations shall flow unto it. Many people shall, what? Go from their land, and say, come with me, let us, what? Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us to walk in his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Nobody's telling you to separate from your righteous wife, from your solid marriage. If anything, if you're unmarried, people are telling you to marry. If you are planting your seed in a woman that is considered in this nation ratchet, that is what these videos are about. Now, if you're missing that point and you're protecting these ratchet women just because they have black skin, chafe to the fucking fire you are. You will be burned. And I don't give a fuck. You don't see me out there protecting white women. You don't even see me protecting yellow women. I'll protect anybody that says, I serve the Creator. I'm a human. That doesn't mean I can sit there and say, whoa, 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 and that person's going to vanish or anything. If I have a shield, I'll stand in front of you when you're in danger. Because if you're in danger, we serve the same God. Then I'm in danger. And this is the point everybody's missing. I don't give a fuck about your skin. But your skin does depict what nation you were a part of. So I shall read again. Now the Israelites came into Utah, and when they came in through Utah, the land was already in the hands of other people. See, he sent you there to get rid of those people off the land, but instead of getting rid of them, you slept with them. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hast cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, and thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Me getting in front of this camera and saying Canaanites are a fucking abomination is me not showing mercy to you. You typing back, crying and shit, who gives a shit? Why should I care? I don't know you. We don't live together. We don't live by each other. I say meet me and protest the person that enslaved all 9 of our nations. And you reject. You say I'm fucking comfortable. That's the true sign of a fucking Canaanite. Comfort. Do not marry them. Do not give your sons to them. Do not give your daughters to them. I said something wrong?
As lazy, as shiftless. All the things African Americans historically been, especially because of themselves.
Did you hear that word he used?
Partly
this is not about opinion. This is not about stereotypes. This is about your historic heathen actions.
Because of other groups. Now what you're going to see is something that I started. And what I started, you're going to look back in the past and say, hey, yeah, he called that. Because what I brought out on the table was the true breakdown of African American lineage, where 60% of them are really Africans, and they're not budging from that. But the other 40%, where they are not African-based people, you're going to see a shift so fast out of this African-American group, it ain't going to be funny.
Oh, it's going to be funny as fuck. Now think, Hebrews are not African. Hebrews, a specific breed called the Israelite, we have in the Bible are born on what we in America call African soil. Africans don't call Africa Africa. That's a European name imposed on the people that they have subjugated, that they rule over. They take your resources back to European countries. They use you in their armies and steal from other countries.
Because if anybody's been paying attention to my videos, I do not claim Africa. I do not claim black. If you go through your family's paternal line, you are what your father is. So any sane person
My dad is not an African. My dad looks just like that picture of Montezuma. When I send my dad Arnoldus Montanus version of Montezuma, my dad says, "What the what? That look like me."
can clearly see that 60% of African Americans share the same lineage. 40% of them do not. And it breaks down even more.
That's right. It breaks down even more. If 40% are not Canaan, that means 40% are what? Other nations. Let's pretend 30% of that 40%, you got 10 left over, 30% are Hebrew. That means 10% Moab, 10% Ammon.
African Americans have been continually late to a party. This party is for intellectuals. When African Americans are invited to an intellectual party, they send people ill-equipped to handle
the rigors of an intellectual conversation. But when buffoonery invites the African American, he shows up in droves. He sends his best buffoons that he can find. And the pickings is vast. So the African American can send the buffoon, but he can't send the intellectual. I sit up here and watched for years African Americans make up stories to every group on the planet. And what you're seeing is, over the years, that African Americans have claimed to Egypt, have claimed Vikings, have claimed Greeks, have claimed Romans, have claimed being Germans. The African Americans have claimed every single group on the face of this planet. The one group that they fail to claim is the one who they really are, which is the Canaanite. So when an African American complains that someone's intellectually flawed or their research is flawed, that complaint goes out void. It comes back void. It can go out any way that they like. They can scream at the top of their lungs, where every African American in the world can hear it, but nobody else is going to hear it. They're not going to hear it because they know African Americans don't show up to intellectual conversations. If you want to get the attention of an African American, say something stupid or invite something or someone who is stupid.
Or take your fucking clothes off. No, that one has to be added. Or take your fucking clothes off and you'll get their attention.
Either way, you'll get the same response from African Americans. And you'll definitely get that if you gear it towards the female or the effeminate men. Now, one thing that amazes me about the African American is he fails to realize his own vulnerability in America. Living mostly in the southeastern United States, sprinkled throughout the rest, he doesn't see the strategic problem with his situation. Strategically speaking, they're extremely vulnerable to annihilation. But yet, when you tell him this, and he regards this information the same way he regards anything else, it's a conspiracy. And you show him the math. You say, hey, you put this situation plus this situation together.
And the last 10% of the 30%, Israel, or what we assume to call Israel. That still leaves room for 10% that's left over. 60, 30, plus 10 equals 40. So 10% of black skin, not being Canaanite, not being any form of Hebrew, could be any other ancient black race. And don't be silly, there's plenty to choose from. I mean, we all know that these exist. We have, what, the Egyptians, we have the ancient Sumer, we have the ancient Elam. You already know about the Canaanites, but that's a false picture because there's a beard there. You already know about black civilization of Crete and Greece, the Minoan and Mycenaean, the original black civilization of Italy, the Etruscans, the ancient Indus Valley, Harappa and Mohenjo. I'm not pronouncing that. Modern India and Pakistan. So there are many nations of black, especially here in the Americas. So historically, ancient Italians came, ancient Grecians came. We already know modern Israel and Palestine. See, ancient Canaan and Phoenicia, modern Israel and Palestine, all lumped into one group. Now that's our argument. One group, one grouping being identified under one classification as African American.
So when people get online and complain about someone not having a so-called African American wife, they can complain all they want.
Whoa! Now, that statement right there, we know this video has to do with the series of videos that we've done. Now, we know Khalil will not get on the phone with us for whatever reason. He enjoys the videos. He talks shit about me, talks about my mom. Well, my mom's house, at least, not directly about my mom. Irrelevant. But now, there's the sentence that shows it's about these last few videos.
40% of them do not. And it breaks down even more. So when people get online and complain about someone not having a so-called African American wife, they can complain all they want, but they're going to have a moral compass to stand on 60% of the time if they are one of those 60% of African Americans.
No.
But if
we're going to go back to this, the moral compass. This is the heart of it. The moral compass.
If they are one of those 60% of African Americans, they can complain all they want, but they're going to have a moral compass to stand on 60% of the time if they are one of those 60% of African Americans.
Now, that statement takes us to another video. It truly does. But there's still a little more than 5 minutes left on here. I want to hear.
But if they are not one of those African Americans by blood through their father, they'll be right as well to not choose an African American wife. Now, as far as the Bible is concerned, the Bible is clearly, if you turned up your intelligence a little bit, you would see that the Bible is clearly tampered with. Old Testament and New Testament. If you went into any of the Asian studies at all, you would see all of the similarities with ancient Buddhism, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism. You can see all of these things. But the African American